welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. This is part 4 of my Peacock Math series, and this will also be the final part. In this video, we're going to finish putting the final touches to the feathers and finish up the painting. If you're following along using traditional painting materials, check out part 1 in this series, where I have a list of all the materials that I use when I'm traditionally painting. This series has been focusing on watercolor, acrylic, and colored pencil techniques. The app that we're going to be using is Infinite Painter for Android, and we're going to go ahead and just start with some minor adjustments to the mask and just make a few finishing touches on the face. So we want to go ahead and just add a little bit of a refinement to the mouth right here. And you can use a burnt sienna color if you're following along with your acrylic paints. And throw in some cadmium red light also to the color, just to give it that kind of reddish brick looking color. And then we're adding a little bit of the gold on the mouth. And you can use yellow ochre with your acrylic paints. And then we just kind of want to finish out the ribbon for that goes behind the flower on the mask. And so I'm using probably yellow ochre mixed with white acrylic gesso for those of you following along with your acrylics. And you can probably use gouache a little bit if you want to, but you have to remember that it will reactivate again if you put water on it. So acrylic might be the best choice for this. And I'm just going ahead and fixing the bow right here and just adding the shapes, adding a little bit of black back into the ribbon here. And you can throw in a little bit of a bluish color, or pick a bluish color that's really dark if you want to for the ribbon, just to make it not look quite so flat. And then here I'm adding in the beads that hang down from the flower. And the beads are a mixture of greens and blue colors and light blue colors too, and just kind of make indications. You don't have to make big details for these beads. Just give kind of an indication of round beads and add a little bit of a light highlight color on them to make them look like the light is glinting off of them. And then here I wanted to go ahead and redo the feathers a little bit. Try not to mess up on them the first time when you're doing this traditionally, because if you're using an acrylic back or a watercolor background, then it's hard to go back over again. But here I just wanted to go ahead and add a more feathery look. I didn't think that I got it quite right. So I went ahead and picked the Angelo brush and reduced the size really small, almost to like a pencil drawing kind of size, and then added in the feathers. And then I went back and used the smudge setting set on Angelo, and then smudged the feathers so that it gave it a feathery look on the edges and the end there, and not so much kind of like a line drawing. And that worked really well in Infinite Painter. If you're doing this with acrylics, just use your number 6 flat brush or your number 8 filbert, and just try to use not a lot of paint and just kind of feather it out towards the end. And don't kill all of your background that shows through. Just kind of try to make light feathery strokes towards the end of the peacock feathers. And then here I went back in and I'm trying to get the eye, I guess you would call it, the peacock eye on the feathers. That's what they used to call them, was the eyes. And I'm using all different colors of blue. You can, if you're following along with your acrylic paint, you can probably use ultramarine blue and throw in phthalo blue and for the light blue color and add a whole bunch of white acrylic gesso. And then you can use that color that I used on the mouth, sort of, for the brownish color of the feathers. And here I'm just using the same technique that I did for the gray part of the feathers. I'm smudging them out, adding in the color with little short strokes and lines, and then taking my smudge brush and setting it on Angelo and smudging the feather colors together, and that gives it that look of a feathery stem, or whatever you would call that there. And then here I'm adding in the green that's on the edge of the peacock feathers, and again I'm keeping the strokes looking jagged here. And then I'll go back and smudge them again, and you just keep doing that till you get that look that you want, where the feathers kind of all blend together here. And you can make them look like a little bit like individual strands, but you kind of want also to smudge them together and just get that texture. You're trying to get the feather texture here. And this is how you do it in Infinite Painter. And if you're doing this with your acrylic paints on traditional materials, then just use your number 6 flat brush and just make a dry brush stroke, which is a stroke with not much paint on it, and let the edges of the bristles feather out towards the end of your stroke. And that will kind of give you this same look. And the goal here in Infinite Painter is that we want that look. So this is how I'm doing it with the smudge brush. And you go ahead and do that same thing on this feather. And for that color of green, you want a light color of green. And if you're using your acrylic paints, then you want to go ahead and mix phthalo yellow green. Maybe throw a little bit of hooker's green in and use white acrylic gesso. And that will give you that peacock color of green that you want there. And then I'm smudging it out again and getting that feather texture here. And just keep on doing that till you're satisfied with the way it looks. And you want to go ahead and be mindful of the shapes, because the peacock feathers have a certain shape that's kind of a teardrop shape, sort of. And so you want to go ahead and make sure that the feathers keep that shape going. You can adjust the strands a little bit of the feathers, just add little bitty strands towards the end of it and just around kind of on the color of it, just to kind of give it that feather-like texture. And then I was working on the headdress just a little bit, adjusting the shape around the top of the head and just trying to get a little bit more of the dark into the folds, just to give it the kind of shadow that appears on the headdress right there. And so you want to go ahead and also add the shadow under the mask, and I'm using the Murando brush from the airbrush category for that, and I'm using a purple color, and you can just go ahead and make a layer underneath your main painting and just add a little bit of a shadow. Make sure you put it under the ribbon and under the headdress and around the collar of the mask, and a little bit under the feathers. The light source is going to be from the left in this picture, and that's the way it was in my photo reference. So just go ahead and add a little bit of shadows around on top of the headdress and underneath the chin, but keep them transparent. And if you're going to do this on your acrylic painting or your watercolor painting, you can either use a really thin down acrylic or you can use watercolor, but let some of the background shine through. Then go ahead and sign it and call it good if you think that that's all you want to do to it. So this is the end of my Peacock Mask series. And everybody stay tuned for a brand new series coming to you soon. Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below, and I will catch you later.